Well, boys and girls, the B-Series engine is almost together. We're waiting on a few different things. As you know, a few things have sort of caught me out that I really wasn't aware of. Hey, you live, you learn. Next time I do one of these things, I'll know exactly what I'm looking for. Now, of course, the cam bearing screwed me around because this is a 5-bearing cam, not a 3-bearing cam. The main bearing screwed me around because they were different. This has got non-integral thrust bearings, whereas the earlier ones do, I believe. Even right down to the timing cover gasket is different between the earlier and later B-Series engines. Which meant that the gasket set which I ordered for a 78 model B-Series engine was in a lot of cases wrong, and I really wasn't expecting it. So one of those is of course the timing cover, which was completely different. I actually had to make up my own timing cover gasket out of some gasket paper and some contact adhesive and stuff like that. And that came along pretty nice. I would have rather been able to put just a nice fresh pre-made gasket on it, but this one turned out pretty alright. Yeah, so if you're really looking into putting a B-Series engine together, I highly recommend getting the engine number, which is cast on the deck of the block just below the intake manifold, and plugging that into, I can't remember which forum it was, but there's a forum out there where people have actually gotten these engine numbers and plotted them on a graph, and that'll give you a pretty good idea of when this engine was actually made. So I use that method, and it should be about an 82 or an 83 model. And the way I've been ordering the right stuff for this engine is actually by typing into my parts system that the car that I have is a BU20 Toyota Dyna, which of course has a B-Series engine in it. So this could be a Dyna engine. It could also be an engine out of a really late model 40 series. I'm sure that people would be able to get the engine number off it and figure out exactly what sort of car it's off, but I haven't really bothered with that. But yeah, that's kind of caught me out, but we're getting there, and that's really all that counts. As you can see, all the timing gears are on, the fuel pump is on it, intake manifold, the head's on, it's all torqued to spec. Plastigauge the big end bearings and main bearings, and they came out to be perfect. Also checked the thrust clearance in the crank, and that's awesome as well. So this engine should be a fairly nice little unit when I get it all running and back together, so fairly exciting times. Now, as for the rest of the 40 series, not much has happened. The chassis is still sitting out there in my yard, and the body's sitting under the porch, which my parents aren't too happy about, but you know, what can you do if you don't have a nice big shed? Really not much I'm waiting for with this B-Series engine. I'm debating whether or not I should buy a new water pump for it, because the water pump that's on it looks really quite new, and it doesn't say Aisin or Toyota or Daihatsu or anything on it, so I reckon it has been replaced at some stage in its life. But I suppose for the extra $100 or whatever it's going to set me back, I might as well chuck a new water pump on it. So this is the heat exchange in the side of the block. Now I pulled this apart so I could chuck a set of gaskets through it, and some seals and stuff, because if you put this thing back on the motor and it leaks water into your oil and vice versa, then it looks like you've got a dud head gasket when really it's actually this, and that can kind of screw you around. So I was going to put a set of new gaskets through it, and my gasket set is of course wrong. So I've got to try and track down some O-rings and make my own gaskets for that, which should be fun. Other than that, I've just got to put the sump back on it, the exhaust manifold, side plate for covering the push rods. Of course, give it a quick feeler gauge in the top end just to make sure the clearances are kind of alright, and send it. See how we go. Also got to order a set of new glow plugs for it as well, because no point putting together a new engine and then leaving the old glow plugs in it, especially if I don't know whether there's some sort of Chinese rubbish and the ceramic will break off and munch up in the cylinder there. So I'll buy a new set of glow plugs, because these ones look a bit sus actually. And Bob's your uncle, it's all come together pretty well. So what we got going on out here, of course, the Mighty 40 series chassis is just sitting out in the weather. Unfortunately, I've got no way to get it under cover. However, you know, it's a chassis, it'll be fine. Pretty much everything is all taken right back. There is, however, a few brake lines and stuff kicking around that I've got to deal with. I will probably replace some of the brake lines because I don't trust them. I do have the front chassis member snipped out of it. I did measure everything up before I actually snipped it out, wrote it all down on a piece of paper, so I've got something to base my future measurements on when it all goes back together and keep all that chassis geometry, which is probably not perfect straight out of the factory, but hey. Anyway, it's copping all this Northern Rivers weather, which is probably not too good for it. I just got to find some time to actually get around to really pegging a weekend on it. Now this has taken up a bit of my time. This, of course, being the RN46 Hilux that I bought with the 18RG in it. Look at those dank boys, those Mikunis, mate, the super schmick. Now I've got it into the backyard, and which was a bit of a mission considering I have no clutch. I've got the clutch master cylinder taken out of it, just over there. Now I'm going to try and resurrect that master cylinder, but I don't know. If it's stuffed, I'll just order another one. Probably about 40 bucks or something like that. Should be right. But other than that, it's running fairly rough, so I'll have to look into that and see whether or not it's an ignition problem or a carby problem. I really, once again, haven't been able to spend much time on it. But luckily enough, most of this stuff is pretty easy to source because it's just 18RG. Sorry, 18R with the distributor and all that sort of stuff. I don't know if you can buy ignition leads for them, but I'm sure eBay will have them. Yeah, she's just sitting out the back here, having a good time, rusting away slowly. We'll get around to it one of these days. But I've got to say, the backyard's looking finna fine at the moment with all this 40 series and Hilux junk. Oh well.